Our first guest tonight is Shir Peled, the first ever female warrior in a special undercover unit in the Israeli army, and the character Nurit from the series Fauda is based on her directly. But being a part of such an undercover unit is not as glamorous as you would think as seen on a TV show, she says. Shir has encountered many difficulties, frightening and sometimes inhumane conditions in her battle against terrorism. Her new venture, Fellow Warriors Association, is an outreach program for people who suffer from post-traumatic stress, which she chairs alongside her work, lecturing about her experience as an undercover warrior. So we'll start with a short video from Shir's work, which I find very inspiring.
Okay. יש לנו חצי שנייה לעוף מכאן. אני והנהג יוצאים מהרכב, שולפים את האקדחים ומכוונים אליו. ברגע הזה הוא קופא. אנחנו מקפלים אותו לטרנזיט, ותוך שניות נעלמים משם. קוראים לי שיר פלד. אני אחת משלושת המסתערבות הראשונות. סכנת חיים ומוות.
I see that Shir is not with us yet, so in the meantime, I will perform another song for you, and we hope, oh, she's here. Hey, Shir, how are you doing?
Hi, good evening.
Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. And your work sounds so inspiring, especially now with this new venture that you've started. But I first wanted to ask you, what kind of role did you have in the IDF, and what, well, of course, what we see on TV is very, very different, but what is the biggest difference or the biggest similarity that you can notice when you are being confronted with the series?
Okay, so as you said before, I was one of the first 3 women to serve as an undercover fighter in the elite unit of the Israeli Border Guard. Mm-hmm. And you'll be surprised, but Nurit's character is very authentic. Of course, it's a show and it's big, it's Hollywoodic. But the basics are very similar, if not accurate, actually. About Nurit's character, I think that to me, maybe the only difference is that her path was a bit different from mine, because I was spotted back in basic training from my very early days as a fighter. And I was wired and trained exactly like the men fighters. Her path was a bit different. So there's scenes on the show when she's in the field. And you can see that a lot of times she's second guessing her role and the purpose of it. We can't second guess when we're in the field. If we second guess and we're not in focus, so it's actually it's a life or death situations.
Yeah, of course, what is shown on TV in length is a split-second decision in real life. So that's probably what people can't really imagine when they watch something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the character is based on, well, of course, on a warrior, but like when you are in these fields and you're in these zones and areas, you have to speak Arabic as well. So did you already speak Arabic before you went on this role, or did you have to pick it up on the go?
Okay, so this is the second surprise for you. I didn't speak Arabic, and I don't till this day. I used to go in the field, into characters without speaking the language. There were a lot of reasons for that, but I actually went undercover without the language.
So how did that go? I mean, like, did you ever second guess yourself in these situations? Because I mean, like, I can imagine if you don't know the language, how would you then blend into the crowd or communicate with people when you had to?
Okay, so when you blend in the field, you have to know the culture very well. Unlike in the show, the whole purpose of blending in the field is being transparent, being like a ghost until the moment we have to fight.
Wow.
So when you know the culture very, very well, you know how to blend without people approaching you. It happens from time to time, but again, you know how to improvise, and you have to be very, very flexible and very creative in the situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I can't really imagine, but I can, I guess, think about what it would be like. That has been some time since your service as an undercover agent. Do you sometimes look back at these memories, and is it sometimes difficult to cope with them?
Actually, I relive those situations, I think, every day. Before I saw Fauda, actually, which triggered into my consciousness. I used to relive it in my subconsciousness. But really, when I saw Ronna Shimon's character, and with the amazing Ronna Shimon, it was a moment that I got a lot of flashbacks, and I felt like I was back there again. And this is actually when I started sharing my story, because it was a secret before that. I never spoke about it. And it made me realize that I have a responsibility to share it and to talk about it.
And I imagine that this is why you've also created Fellow Warriors, because I'm really curious about your work with that. It seems to me very important to have something in common with like-minded people, and also the ability to connect with them. And it's inspiring to empower others that have been through the same experience as you did. Could you please tell me more about your work with that?
Sure. So when I first started lecturing, I think it took me about 2 years to realize that I cope with PTSD, because back in the army, I was in an all-male environment. So I had to be tougher than the men fighters. I had to show resilience. And for me to talk about something that was considered a weakness was out of the question. And that perception stuck with me for a long time. It was about after 2 years, I was already lecturing and sharing my story, that I came across a book that wrote somebody who served in my unit, and he's also coping with PTSD, post-trauma syndrome. And after reading his book, it clicked. I realized that patterns, behavior patterns, and a lot of experience that I cope with actually has a name, and it's PTSD. And the first thing, again, that came to my mind is, if I kept it a secret, and I was very shameful to talk about it for a long time, there's more women like me. And if PTSD is something that we don't, almost don't speak about in the Israeli society, especially women, it's something that we don't know nothing about. And also, I felt that I needed a place to feel safe, to talk about experience, and think about how can I help myself, but also other women. And that's when I founded the group and started this line of work alongside the lectures.
So it is directly intended for women, or generally?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For women that cope with PTSD from the battlefield.
Amazing. It's amazing work. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And please stay with me on the line, because I'd like to invite Ronna to join us. Well, first, a little introduction is in order, although probably a lot of people here know Ronna. But Ronna is an actress, dancer, and a model, and she is well known for her role as Nurit in the hit series Fauda, of course. She plays the part of the only woman in a Special Forces Army unit, and not a lot of people know that, but Ronna attended school at the Royal Ballet Academy right here in Amsterdam. So perhaps I should address you in Dutch. So, hi Ronna, hoe gaat het?
Goedenavond.
Goedenavond.
Yes? Okay.
You speak the language. Awesome.
Just a little bit, really. It's been so many years since I've been there, and I miss it so much. It has a lot to do with who I have become as a person, and it's so much in my heart. So, yeah.
How long did you spend here?
Almost 2 years.
2 years. Wow, awesome. I also came here to study, but I got positively stuck. You know, I like it here. Yeah. So this is a question for both of you. You girls became friends during the filming and the research period for Fauda. So what was it like to be on the set together?
Actually, that's not correct. We met. I think it was between the first and second season where I think in my head it wasn't possible for a woman to do what Nurit has done. And then I started getting a lot of calls from people in the army between the 2 seasons, and one of them was a very high up general, and he called me up. He's like, "What's up? I love the show." And I'm like, "Look, I have to ask you a question. Is there a woman who did Nurit's role in the army?"
Okay.
And a silent on the line. And I was like, "Hello?" He's like, "Yeah, I can't talk to you about that." And I was like, "Can you just tell me yes or no?" He's like, "No, if you want to meet, we'll meet, but I can't talk about it on the phone." And I was like, "Oh my God." And then I think after the second season, I started hearing about maybe there is someone. And after the third season, I started hearing about Shir.
Wow. So you didn't know each other at the beginning at all?
No. And then we spoke because we knew we were supposed to meet in Washington for the APAC convention. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we met. And I think Shir is one of the bravest women I've ever met. And
she looks like
it. Every time we meet, she has this more crazy story to tell about her life. And she's like the best storyteller and just the bravest and so inspiring. And yeah.
Wow.
And crazy.
And crazy, yes.
I want to hear some of these stories. Well, maybe not live, but like later, if you don't mind me asking extra questions.
What about what? Stories? About for me?
Yeah, I mean, like I would love to hear some of these stories, if you don't mind. But like, well, maybe now for our audience, we'll ask different questions. But, we had a lot of people sending questions in already in advance, and one of them was for Ronna, what would you say is Nurit's strongest personality trait?
I think I would say persistence. I think there's something about her that would not quit. And I think there's, I think she has the tool of being brave, even if she doesn't really understand the situation. And she has this she wants to prove herself so much, and she does everything to prove to herself and to people around her that she is worthy, she's capable, and that she belongs. And I think that's a wonderful motive for a character. And so, yeah.
Fantastic. She sounds very Israeli to me. Like all Israeli women I know are like that. Very direct, very persistent, very, like going for the prize. Well, actually, Shir, were you ever on the set? Were you a part of the filming?
No, I never wore the set. And again, Ronna never knew about me because when I saw her as Nurit, that's when I decided to share my secret and expose my story. So yeah, I met Ronnie, of course. I met Avi, the amazing Avi. But no, I never went on set.
I'm gonna bring her to the set for the first.
Ooh.
That sounds like going back to nature, getting back to nature. Did you film really in conflict areas? Because I imagine you have to, of course, work a lot to create this atmosphere of the scene, and like on the set. But like, did you also go around these battlefields or war zones? Did you film really in conflict areas?
I hate to burst your bubbles, but no, because you're basically insurance-wise, you're not allowed. But they had to be very smart with location and just make it look like the original places. Which we talk about. But the first season we shot during the war, during Tsuketan, and yeah, and it was very, very surreal. We were discussing the conflict while it was bursting, and it was just on fire. Just every day was, we had alarms going, and we had to go in for shelter, and we had to stop production, and we didn't know if we were able to shoot because there were bombs coming in, and it was and with all that, I think the fact that we have managed to have half of the crew and people were Arabs, and we were able to keep working together and creating art, it was mind-blowing, and it had a lot of hope in that experience.
That's inspiring. It's nice to know that, also in my work, I'm a musician, so I have a lot of collaborations with Arabic and even Palestinian performers. And it seems to me that the conflict is always in other areas. So like somehow art manages to overbridge things that other things can. So I feel very privileged to be experiencing this myself. And I'm sure you have done even more. Embodying this role of an undercover agent is basically nothing to compare with real life. So I was wondering if you underwent any special training, psychological or physical, in preparation for your part, or even did you even feel prepared for doing this job?
I have to say I never feel prepared before any production. Not before theater, not before television, not before movies. It's very difficult to feel like you have done enough, and it could be very scary and intimidating.
Yeah.
But for this role specifically, I knew I had to cover up for the fact that I wasn't in the army. I was dancing ballet in Amsterdam, and so I didn't know how to shoot, and I didn't want to come to set without knowing how to hold a gun and without looking professional.
Yeah.
And so my brother trained me for that, and I did Krav Maga, and then for the second season, I did boxing, and I was trying to give her a physique that would embody the mental strength that she had to be in order to function in that kind of mental scenario. Mm-hmm. And for the mental part of it, I basically talked to a lot of my brother's friends who had a hard time in the army. And even on set, I think stories from Lior and Avi, and hearing about PTSD. Idan, who plays Sagi, talks about it a lot, about PTSD, about dreaming about it, about and I think living in Israel does really do half the job, because you actually live it most of the time. Not not to take anything from, like, I will never be able to fully understand what Shir has went through in her service. I will never have that capacity to understand, but I did my best to just talk to people who has gone through that.
Yeah. But I think what you say is very true. Like, being an Israeli citizen, especially living in Israel in times of conflict, everybody knows somebody who is in the army, or they're either in the reserve forces, or they have a son who is in the army. So loss is just a heartbeat away You're always constantly surrounded by it. And I guess that gives the entire country the feeling of belonging and also the feeling of joint stress. So in a way, it brings us together. There are, of course, horrible sides to it, but also very positive sides into being something in something together.
Yeah.
It brings us together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this question is for both of you. What would you like people to take away from the series or from the real Nurit? So Shir, Peled, what you did in your job. So what would you like people to take away from these experiences?
Well, I think I'm gonna connect it to this time, the Corona time, when we all sort of living in an uncertainty state all the time because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. And as an undercover fighter, I used to live in uncertainty almost all the time, actually. I want to say that sometimes it's very stressful, I know, but what helps me to cope with it, and I think it's something really positive that I took with me, is to work with the fear and work with the stress, and try to be, again, flexible and creative, and try to look for new ways to do new things. And it's something that I do all the time. So I think it's a good tip.
Thanks. And Ronali, do you have something to share?
I think the show has done something very primal that no other show has done so far, which was to present, for the best of our ability, to present both sides of the conflict. And I think what I would want people to take from it is there is always another story you know nothing about. Whether it's people around you, whether it's thinking that you have an idea about somebody else's struggle, you don't know. You have no ability to really, really know. And I think that's one of the things that touched me the most in the show, is that it was so inclusive in the way that we talked about the other side's conflict as well, and how it was so humane. And yeah, I think that's what I would take. Just maybe more tolerance and knowing that you don't know everything, and maybe go out to the world just knowing that, instead of thinking that you know and you have a closed opinion and that can never be changed. And so, yeah.
You open at the close.
That's my Instagram thing.
What? Your what?
Never mind. It's a sentence I love from Harry Potter.
From Harry Potter, yeah. You have that quote on your Instagram? All right, yeah. Awesome. I read the book series twice, so it was 10 years apart. But okay, so before we go to the Q&A, this would be a good time for you guys in the audience to write down your questions. If you want to ask Ronali or Shir Peled any questions, please put them now in the chat. And we're going to play a little game in between. I have a series of a few fun questions for you, and you're supposed to reply with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready to play?
Ooh.
With us, you mean?
Oh yeah, it's with you.
Oh.
While they are writing their questions in the chat, I'm going to ask you other questions that I prepared myself. Ready to go?
Yes.
Good. So for starters, what is your favorite word?
I almost said a dirty word, but I'm not going to say it.
That's all right.
Favorite word. I think
wow, that's hard.
It changes, but I think right now I would say hope.
Ooh, I love it.
Good one.
Favorite word. We're Israelis, so a curse went to my head also. That was the first thing.
You can write it in the private chat. I won't.
But yeah, but I think I'll go with ronna and I'll say joy.
Yeah. We need that, especially now.
Mm-hmm.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
All of the above. What do you mean?
No, I mean, like, what would turn you on creatively or emotionally or spiritually? What are the things that give you the buzz in these aspects, these areas?
Well, I love music. It's with me all the time, and it makes me always feel better or relaxes me. And when I work out, when I'm in the car, when I'm with my son, so it's always there and it's nice. So I'll go with music.
Yeah, sounds good to me. What's playing on your list right now?
The last thing I heard,
Yeah.
it was Pearl Jam.
Awesome.
Nice. Ready. That's a good one. I would say, I think conversations with people, with like some conversations are enough to ignite my mind and send me off to a journey of like, oh my God, something needs to be done, or an idea that is planted. But I think it's between interactions with people is a big force of motivation for me.
Amazing. Interesting talks. There's a Dutch band called Long Conversations. Maybe you should check it out. There's a Dutch band called Long Conversations. So I think it will inspire you both with especially with the recent answers that you just gave. What sound or noise do you love?
I will go
with Pearl Jam.
Yeah, and just recently I went back to my love, which is shooting a gun, and actually it's one of my favorite noises.
Really? Wow.
I don't know if it's the PTSD talking or me, but
Shir,
love
can
it.
we go shooting together?
Oh, we have to.
Let's do that, man.
Let's
together.
We have. Oh, it's gonna be awesome.
Wow.
You should good. You hold the gun great, I have to say.
I'm a good
actor. So you probably you aim good.
There was a period of time where I was a good shooter because my brother was so hard on me with teaching me. He was so brutal. And I was good for a while, but I'm sure I'm not anymore. But you can teach me now.
Sure, I can train you for season 4.
Season 4, for sure. Yep.
Let's do it.
Wow. I will not be joining because they're too loud for me, the guns. Like I even have earplugs on when I'm doing the dishes. So you can imagine, like, it's not gonna work. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would say something that involves a lot of traveling. I think for many years, my answer to that was a National Geographic photographer.
That's fun. But there's a lot of patience involved, right? Like you'd have to wait for 2 weeks before you spot a tiger.
So I think mine would be like more following trees and like rainforests.
Yes. Things that are already there.
Yes. So no patience, just like traveling.
Yeah. Or you can be the host of a travel show. Like they do all the research for you and then you come in and you eat all the good food and
you just travel.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yes.
Yeah. And Shir?
I always said that when I'll be older, I'll have some kind of van with, and I'll sell secondhand clothes. So I think traveling with a van and clothes is great for me.
Well, if you come to Amsterdam, I'll show you all the vintage places.
Shir now is one of the most talented stylists in Israel, and we together for a couple of times, and she is amazing.
All right.
Thank you.
So basically, you'll take me shopping when I'm coming to Israel.
Sure.
Sounds good. I'll take you shopping here if you come. Like when I did
that's
crowdfunding
awesome.
for my album, like one of the prizes that I gave as offering to the audience if they would contribute was an afternoon with me checking out the vintage treasures of Amsterdam.
Oh, here's something I love the most: secondhand stores in Amsterdam.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh,
yeah. Well, let Corona pass and get vaccinated. Come over.
Is the market on Waterloo Plain still there?
I live right there, so.
Wow.
That's where my school was. Every day I would go to the market, every day. Oh.
I live like 2 minutes walk from your school.
Oh my God. What a dream.
Nice. So last question from me, at least. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you enter the gates? It's not a trick question.
I would want him to say, "You did good, kid. Now let's get to work."
The real work. Like you haven't done anything until now.
Yeah. No, I'm doing a lot. It's just there's so much more to be done.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Wow, it's a tricky one, huh?
Makes you think.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna think about it a little bit more.
Go for it. So I see we have like some people in the audience that already wrote some questions. So Leo Small has a question for Shir. What was your motivation as a woman to do such exceptional, risky work?
Well, hi, Leo. Thank you for the question. I never saw it as me being a woman doing something really risky. It looked very natural for me to go to the army and to have the freedom of choice to do something like the boys back then. It was a bit more difficult for me because back then there were no combat roles for women. And that's, I think, was the first time that I stumbled across the equality. But I never saw it as me being a woman. That wasn't the point. The point was to do something meaningful and really to just to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a question I get a lot also as a traveling musician. So people tell me, why do you go to all these places alone? You're a woman. Aren't you scared something is going to happen? What is your motivation to go so far away from home? And I say, well, yeah, my motivation is to look for the experiences. I'm not so much of a person that goes for the things, but more for the experiences. And a lot of people think that I do it because I'm a feminist, because I want to make a declaration. But
exactly,
no,
but
I just do it because I want to do it, and it's interesting for me, and it's inspiring for me, especially meeting other people. Like what Ronali said at the beginning, the most inspiring thing about traveling is seeing new cultures and making things work, and knowing that we're actually global citizens, or we all in the same problem together. Basically, this realization makes us what we are, human, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I have a question here from Lude Hospers for Ronna. Is there life after Fauda? And what is the influence of Fauda on your life and career?
Thank you, Luda, for the question. Yes, there is a lot of life to be lived after Fauda. I'm actually coming from theater. That was my main occupation before. I think TV, at least here in Israel, doesn't come a lot. We don't. It's still a lot in development, and I think content is only now rising to a point where people understand the importance of it, so they start to make more of it. But I I love the theater art, and that's my first home and always will be. Of course, now it's not really happening anywhere, so now we just wait for it to come back. But I did a lot of theater during and after Fauda, and yeah, so theater and other projects, more movies and TV shows, and studying and teaching. I teach a lot of theater, and yeah.
It sounds like you have a very fruitful life, and Fauda is only a part of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question from Leonard Sanders for Shir. How do you stay mentally in control? How do you keep your cool, basically, when you're operating in a hostile area?
Well, there's a lot of techniques for that. I think even at the special training right at the beginning, it's the first thing we train to do. One of the drills, one of the training we used to have was confident drills. The instructors used to stop us by surprise and give us very unusual missions, like go to the 10th floor of a building and like be in the window with a glass of water after 10 minutes when you don't know the area, you don't know who lives there, and all sorts of exercises and training like that. It was meant to help us to be, again, flexible and creative in the situation. My first one actually was a failure. I just panicked and froze. But with time, you learn how to not freeze when danger is coming, and again, when you're in a very unknown situation. So it's all about training, like everything else.
Yeah, I can imagine that you need a lot of training for something like that. It sounds, yeah, quite challenging to me. Like,
it is.
Yeah. Now, girls, this is really an amazing conversation. Do you have anything that you would like to share with us, regardless of the questions that we've already asked?
I feel like I'm grateful to be here and talk to inspiring people, and Nani, who coordinated this, is in such a beautiful, elegant, and interesting way. So thank you. And Shir, you're my boss lady. You're like the true champion. You're so inspiring to me. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you so much. I'll tell you a little story about our last meeting, mine and Ronalie's. We took a photo together for an exhibit that raised awareness of PTSD. And for me, I don't know if Ronalie knows it, but it was a very special moment because 2 years back, I was sitting in front of the TV one evening, and suddenly I see Ronalie and everything surfaced back, and to stand together, looking at each other in a set that really similar to something like in the unit was very exciting and very emotional to me. So thank you, Ronalie, for inspiring me back. And thank you, Noam. It was a pleasure being here. And thank you for being here all.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your stories. It's been great to talk to you and to get to know you a little bit more on the personal level. And stay in touch. I mean, maybe see you in another event or...
Yes, or in Amsterdam, hopefully soon.
Amsterdam, doing vintage shopping.
We'll make you a video when we go shoot together.
Yes, for sure.
I'll do the same. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to welcome the beautiful cat, Burbage, back into the room. So bye, girls, for now. I see you very soon. Thanks for taking.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.